So it's the first time we've seen nodes in about 2 years, and I thought it was another good live stream. I thought the format was really good, similar to the Freehold format with the PowerPoint before the actual in-game footage. And we learned quite a bit of new things about nodes, and quite a bit of things were things we already knew. Before the nodes presentation, they did the standard YouTube comment. They selected a comment from some random nerd named Rive Genesis. But did they? Oh no, they didn't. They instead selected a comment from Slender MMO. And then they talked about the discussion round podcast coming up next weekend, so make sure you don't miss that. I will do a recap of that as well. And then the bulk of the stream was obviously about the nodes, and first they did the PowerPoint presentation, and the first slide was on citizenship. And of course we know that housing is required for citizenship in the nodes. And we know that there's 4 different types of housing: inns, apartments, static housing, and freeholds. Now inns we didn't know a tremendous amount about, but they've been talking about these for a few months now. With citizenship, we know that there are dues that must be paid, and we know that there's a number of benefits, including reduced service fees, reduced taxes, access to relics, and unique vendors. We learned some new details about losing citizenship. Citizens can renounce their citizenship at the town hall, and doing so does trigger a cooldown before you can become a citizen elsewhere. So if you're mad at your node and you want to go to another node and maybe become a mayor or whatever and then launch a node war against that node, there is a cooldown before you can do so. However, if your node is destroyed, you do get refugee status, which allows you to become a citizen elsewhere immediately once you get housing. Further details on inns were talked about in the commentary. It is of course the most accessible form of housing, and there's not really a limit to how many people can be in an inn because it is instanced. The main limit to the amount of people that could be in an inn and therefore get citizenship would be the higher costs that would be associated the more players are citizens of a node. Something interesting about inns is that they're actually even available in starting areas, they mentioned, which I found kind of interesting. And of course you can get storage and you can get furniture in the inns as well. It is the lowest level of housing, but it's a good kind of starter housing. And they talked a bit more about apartments. Every node has apartments, and you can expand the amount of apartments that are in a node. There's different types of apartments that can be built. There are penthouses, for instance, which are kind of an improved version of an apartment, which allows for things like better furniture. Slide number 2 is on mayorship. We learned about the different election types. Now, some of these have not changed. Scientific nodes, for instance, which I guess are now called academic nodes, but they still have them labeled as scientific nodes here. There are now ranked choice popular votes. So it used to be just popular vote, now it's a ranked choice popular vote. Divine is a PvE favor competition, so the currency within Divine nodes is favor. Economic is now a blind bid. It's not just an auction, it's a blind bid auction. Military is a trial by combat. Now this used to be some sort of thing where you would build a combat like golem type thing and then go battle other people with that. Now it is much, much different. You can become a candidate, and once you become a candidate, other citizens can pledge to support you. And they talked about the actual battles being in an instance where these different groups can battle out over objectives. Taking objectives gives you points. The person with the most points at the end of the week will become mayor. And of course, there are many benefits to being mayor: titles, mounts, cosmetics, event abilities, and of course the ability to set policies and construct buildings and many other things. In the comments, they mentioned that there are some differences between the different node types in terms of the benefits for the mayors. They talked about what happens if a mayor quits. Well, some of the decisions are automated. Other than that, players might just have to wait till the next election cycle, and elections happen every month. A little bit of confusion on my part when they talked about enemy of the state. This was something they've talked about in the past in the wiki, and it sounds like maybe this is no longer a thing, that you can no longer flag a player as an enemy of the state. The next slide was on mandates. This is a system we had never seen before or heard about in terms of nodes. This is basically an energy system that enables mayors to take actions for the node. There are different activities that can generate mandates, such as policy votes, construction contribution, and you can see the rest on the screen. And mandates can be spent on all sorts of different things, like changing tax rates, using them to bypass policy voting, initiating constructions, and many other things. In general, they said if a mayor does well and citizens like how a mayor is doing, they will get more mandate energy. The next slide was on mayoral commissions. This is a very simple type of quest with a singular objective. These can be started by the mayor using gold from the treasury. When completed, the node receives rewards such as commodities, reputation, mandates, and temporary buffs. Players will get experience, node reputation, node currency, and other rewards. New commissions will open up based on node type, location, and building choices. There are a limited number of mayoral commission slots. There's also node commissions, which are a separate thing from mayoral commissions. Node commissions are not chosen by the mayor. Anyone can participate in these, doesn't have to be a citizen of the node. The number of players that complete these commissions and the time limit determines how good the node is rewarded. The next slide was on policies. We've heard a bit about policies in the past. Policies alter all sorts of things with the way the node functions, in terms of it can adjust taxes and fees, buffs, reputation. Mayors will have to propose policies and citizens can vote to approve or deny these policies. There is a limited number of policy slots available. Mayors can use their mandates to bypass the player vote requirement, and policies unlock based on all kinds of different conditions, which you can see here. During emergency situations, enacting policies might require a lot less votes. The next slide was on service buildings. There are default buildings that come pre-built with the node, and then there are constructed buildings that are initiated by the mayor and built by players. Active buildings provide a service or a reason for players to visit them. There are many different subtypes: artisan, business, content, and political. Then there are passive buildings, which provide passive benefits to the node or zone of influence. And you can see the different subtypes here. Then there's building expansions. The primary method for upgrading buildings is through expansion. Then something interesting here was active building expansions require passive buildings to allow for expansions to be built. So the passive and the active buildings kind of work together. And then expansion trees are designed so that building specialization narrows as it is expanded. And this is very interesting because this makes it so one node cannot do everything no matter what. And they also talked about how some nodes might want to build multiple types of one type of service building in order to unlock all the different trees if they want to specialize in, say, one type of crafting. Then they talked about service building maintenance. There's of course regular maintenance that is needed. If maintenance is missed, the building enters a state of disarray. If it's in disarray or it's damaged as a result of a siege or event, players must contribute materials to restore the building to an operational state. And mayors can destroy a building or demolish a building if they no longer need that building. This does cost mayor mandates, and a player vote is required on this one to avoid a mayor going rogue, basically. Constructed buildings can be destroyed, of course, as a result of a siege or event, and this takes them to a rubble state, after which a period of time they will become an empty plot again and can be rebuilt. These service buildings have predetermined locations where they can be built, but there's usually several empty plots, and you can choose where you would like to put them. Something interesting with this is during sieges, where you've placed these buildings could matter quite a lot, because if they're very near the entrance to your town and you get sieged, they could be a pretty easy target and they can be destroyed. And even if you don't lose the siege, you can lose specific buildings. And the final slide was on buy orders. These are the primary way for the node to generate node commodities that can be spent on building construction, upgrades, and maintenance. These can be initiated using gold from the treasury, and there are sliders that the mayor has in terms of how many materials are needed to complete the order and other factors. Players are rewarded node currency and reputation for fulfilling these buy orders. And when we get into the gameplay footage, we will see the buy order system and some of these other systems in action. And I'm showing you most of this as well as I've been going through these slides. So after the slides, they got into the main actual gameplay video. We see the buy order interface. We see them gathering the materials needed for the buy orders. We see them traveling down the road, which looks good. It's been a while since we've seen a road in Ashes of Creation. And they go into the Winstead node. We see in-node housing for the first time. We see the caravansary for the first time. And they hinted when they walked into the caravansary that we might be seeing caravans in a few months. So now we know they've talked about crafting coming up soon, and now we also know that caravans are also a future live stream here within the next few months. And the node itself looked incredible, in my opinion. I thought it looked really good. The aesthetics are really pleasing. And then Stephen went and talked to the requisition agent, which is where you turn in your goods for the buy order that he created earlier. And then he goes into the node taxes interface to crank the taxes up. He goes and buys a bunch of stuff, which that higher tax rate puts a bunch of gold into the treasury, which he then uses to start the building. In the buildings tab, we see the building tech tree, and then he confirms construction. He talks to the construction foreman, gives the construction foreman the goods needed to actually start the construction, and we see the really cool animation that goes off after that. And we see him go into the smithy interface and craft a blood sword. We learned that this is an academic node that they're in, and he shows off some of the other buildings that are work in progress, but all of them look very good in my opinion. And that really was it. I thought it was a very good stream. I think we're going to see more about nodes in the next several months. When they talk about caravans, they could talk more about nodes. And when they talk about crafting, they could certainly talk more about nodes as well. And I think there will be more node-focused streams coming up as well. With as complex as nodes are, they can't talk about everything in one stream. We only saw maybe 10% of nodes here, and it was incredibly long, just as is, because they're just incredibly complex. And that's all I had for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed the stream as much as I did. With that, guys, I'll see you in the next video.